Hello, good morning. I'm Diana Coriat. Welcome to MendoLatino.
Hola, mi nombre es Loreto Rojas. We are the host of MendoLatino. Today, we bring you a special English language version of a program we recorded in Spanish last week. We speak today with Edwin Carmona-Cruz, an immigrant rights expert, to talk about who loses and who benefits from the massive ICE raids happening in California and across the US. We will discuss how important it is for everyone to know their rights, steps we can take to protect our community, and what to do if a loved one is detained. We will also tell you about local organizing efforts.
That's right. And why are we doing this in English today? So much is at stake here locally. The current policies are negatively impact our community in so many ways, from all the individuals and families who live and work here to our local businesses and industries, which are agriculture, tourism, the wine business, restaurants, and so much more. And, just to give you an idea, I was listening last week to Reveal. Now, Reveal, I would highly recommend. It's a nationally televised and rigorously fact-checked podcast. And they recently broadcast their investigation into ICE. So, what they bring up is that though President Trump promised to focus on what he called, quote unquote, criminal aliens, they found that there are roughly 60,000 people in ICE detention right now, with less than a third of them with any criminal convictions at all. The reality is that ICE is arresting people in front of their kids at school, drop-offs on the way to church, and at routine check-ins at the immigration offices with little due process. And really, this is just the start. The Trump administration's mega spending bill is going to grow ICE's budget from $8 billion a year to nearly $28 billion. So much, and more than many nations spend on their entire military.
So to continue talking about this situation, we want to introduce our guest, Edwin Carmona-Cruz. Edwin is the executive director of the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice. Edwin co-leads the CCIJ and leads its statewide campaigns, participatory defense, and rapid response to help achieve its mission of ending immigration detention in California. Prior to joining CCIJ, Edwin was co-director and community legal advocate with Pangea Legal Services in San Francisco. They focused on providing legal support on deportation defense cases and leading public campaigns for the release of immigrants in detention. While in San Francisco, Edwin held membership to the Free SF Coalition, supporting local and regional advocacy efforts with respect to the intersection of immigrant rights and criminal justice. Edwin Carmona-Cruz was formerly a Department of Justice accredited representative, representing immigrants before the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, while at La Raza Centro Legal, where he ultimately served as the development director. He holds a BA in International Studies from the University of San Francisco, where he is now an adjunct faculty teaching advocacy skills to undergraduate and graduate students. He is the youngest son of immigrant parents from Morelos, Mexico. Edwin has dedicated his life inspiring social responsibility within communities. Currently, he lives in Azusa, California, where he was born and raised. We are so pleased to have you in our program today, Edwin. Bienvenido a MendoLatino.
Thank you so much. It's quite interesting to hear your bio be read to you. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, it's impressive. So we wanted to read the whole thing. So, Edwin, what is CCIJ, as it's often called, because it has such a long name, and its mission?
Thank you. Yes, for the sake of this interview, I will be referencing the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice as CCIJ. CCIJ, we build power towards liberation. We're a statewide organization that's really approaching the issue around immigration detention, immigrant rights in this innovative and creative way. We're not a traditional legal services organization or an advocacy organization. Again, building power towards liberation. And building power means a lot of different things. Currently, CCIJ, like I mentioned, is a statewide organization. We do provide and host a legal clinic once a month at 2 facilities in California, the Mesa Verde ICE Processing Center located in Bakersfield, and the Golden State Annex, which is located in McFarland, California, both in Kern County. And so, and I can't talk about the work that CCIJ does today without actually going back to our roots and how we were created. CCIJ was actually created out of the first Trump administration in 2016. We were a merger between 2 different collaboratives, a rapid response collaborative, which we'll talk about today, and a detained removal defense collaborative, and how those 2 mesh, right? So what happens is there's ICE enforcement in the community. There are and exist many rapid response networks, hotlines where members of the community can call whenever there's ICE enforcement or ICE presence in the community. CCIJ does not host those hotlines, but we do the attorney activation piece of rapid response. And we'll get into what that looks like later. But what happens is when there is not a successful intervention in rapid response with the attorney activation, success meaning liberation or freedom after the arrest, then the individual then gets sent to a detention center where we there continue to provide some sort of legal support to their families, to their loved ones, also try to refer cases to private practitioners who can take on these cases either pro bono or low bono, meaning free or at low cost to families, because these processes can be very expensive. So that was the merger. That's how CCIJ was created. And since then, since 2016 till now, we're kind of coming back to basics with the way that we're approaching our work and making sure that we are able to create systems and structures that involve community-based organizations, faith groups, removal defense providers. And so that's what CCIJ is.
Beautiful. So needed right now, and so interesting that you were created in the first Trump administration. Though it's interesting, I think there's so much more attention being brought right now to the ICE detentions due to the way that they're being carried out. Now, an important part of your work, as you're saying, is educating the community, helping communities organize themselves. And part of that is knowing their rights. And so the question I have for you right now is, who should know about their rights? Like, should citizens know too? Is it just people who are possibly here in an undocumented way? And the second part of that is, does it even matter when our rights and due process are not even being respected? So, again, who should know about their rights and why?
Everyone should know about their rights, right? This is all of the rights that are bestowed upon us through the US Constitution. It does not matter. And it's very clear that those rights are given to people, to persons. And it does not specify whether someone is documented or undocumented. And so whether you're listening to us today and you are a citizen, born here, naturalized citizen, what have you, or someone who may have DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or some sort of other quasi-legal status, right, or have a work permit, everyone should know what their rights are. And not just in a situation where you are confronted with immigration and customs enforcement, ICE, as well as when you're confronted with law enforcement, local law enforcement, right? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to request an attorney. There are certain policies, there's certain procedures, certain case law that protects individuals and their well-being. So everyone should know their rights. And so oftentimes when we talk to family members or people who may think, well, that doesn't involve me, I'm not involved in that. We're much more intertwined than what people think, right? Because again, if they're violating, Diana, your rights, or they're violating my rights or Loreto's rights, we are giving permission to violate anyone's rights. And I think that's super key and critical to understand in this moment that we can't allow certain events to take place, because that is giving like a free pass, like a free hall pass for whether it's law enforcement, whether it's ICE or whoever that may be, to violate other people's rights, right? They come for the most vulnerable first, and then they go up the chain, right? And we've seen that. We've seen arrest of U.S. citizens that were born here during ICE enforcement or ICE raids that are happening all across California and the country. So it's important for us to realize that it's not just U.S. citizens that need to know, or people that may not have documents. Everyone needs to know what their rights are.
And so, Edwin, could you just again just refer to what we need to do if we are stopped by ICE, like the few steps that how to respond, what will be the best way to deal with them?
Exactly. And I think that there's multiple layers here, right? I mean, there's the person that is targeted by law enforcement, right? I think what's most important is the right to remain silent. In an event where such escalation happens, violent escalation happens, it is a natural reaction to, try to kind of get away, survival, right? Being like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And it is important to remain calm, and important to like I said, the right to remain silent, because ICE in this situation could say, if I'm the agent and I'm arresting Diana, but I'm actually looking for Loreto, I would say to Diana, are you Loreto? And if Diana says, no, I'm Diana, but they're actually looking for Diana, that, which is often called like a ruse, right? Sometimes there's like little events that happen that trick people in answering, then you've just have admitted that you are that person, right? But if you have the right to remain silent because you don't know who this person is, right? Sometimes some ICE agents are either covered, or you can see their face, or they won't tell you which agency they work for. Again, it's important for you to remain silent. It's in a moment of such increased pressure and escalation, you'll feel the need to sign documents, or feel the need to succumb to this pressure. You do not need to sign anything, and you do not need to succumb to the pressure of anyone, whether it's law enforcement or ICE, because you have the right to speak to an attorney. And even if you don't have an attorney, you have the right to request one. And like I said, before signing anything, you need to have some sort of evaluation of what are my rights in the situation, or what does my case look like. There's every case is a whole universe. The possibilities are endless, right? So that's like one example, right? Then there's another example of someone who is just a bystander, who's witnessing a situation like this, right? And whether you're a U.S. citizen, right? And I want to also preface by saying everyone should assess their own risk when confronted in a situation that's very violent like that. I'm not here to say that you should do this or you should do that, but in fact, everyone should make their own calculated assessment of, okay, can I approach a very violent and escalated situation and ask which law enforcement agency you're working for, what's your badge number, where are you taking this person? If you feel like you are willing to take that risk, you can ask those questions. Again, there's a question around what could I record with my phone, and where can I record with my phone, right? Again, everyone has to assess their own situation, and we've seen especially videos on social media, in the news, of individuals who've also been arrested or have been retaliated for recording, right? But there's also been cases of people where that has not happened, right? So again, everyone needs to assess their own situation and their risks by speaking to an attorney, or to expert advocates who have done this work for a long time, to make sure that you don't compound the violent escalation when there is an ICE enforcement presence near you.
Right. And while we're talking about this, I want to let our audience know that locally there are several organizations right now that are offering Know Your Rights trainings in Spanish and also in English. And that includes Nuestra Alianza of Willets, Vision Family Resource Center, otherwise known as NCO. And these trainings can be conducted in person or virtually. And both of these organizations can also help people with free and or low cost immigration legal services. And those are available through various partnerships with different organizations in Northern California. Another thing I want to let local folks know is that, and Edwin, I would like you to know about this because we're not standing by passively here, at all. I know there are rapid response networks being formed. I counted 25 on your website, and I think there are even more now, perhaps, but there are going to be another one. So locally, over the past few months, community members across our county, Mendocino County, have been quietly building a rapid response network. And so, fortunately, till now, no big immigration raids have yet been reported locally. We know that they've occurred in nearby areas, and we believe that people here want and need to be prepared for that. So the network is designed to respond quickly to reports of possible immigration activity. So if ICE comes, how to verify this situation, how to share verified information, and connect families with reliable support. So these are things that this and many other rapid response networks do.
Diana, I wanted to mention too
Sure.
that there are already 50 people, trained volunteers in our county, and very soon a hotline number will be launched for people to call when they see suspected ICE sightings. And there's going to be a whole procedure that this group is going to follow in terms to confirm or deny the presence of ICE. And then we will, share that with the community when it's appropriate. So I just wanted to let people know, and MendoLatino will be interviewing them and explaining more in detail how people can get involved and what are their efforts and how they are being organizing.
Yeah, and Edwin, going back to what you were saying, I think it's so important to just keep reiterating you can't give them a free pass to violate anybody's rights because as we know, there's a lot of racial profiling going on right now. So even Native Americans who are indigenous to this place have been racially profiled and have been stopped. Do you want to say anything about this I know that the Supreme Court recently and federal courts have given the administration a pass on racial profiling, which is so disturbing.
It's incredibly disturbing, but it's also part of a calculated effort, Diana and Loreto. When you are given a free pass to racial profile, especially in a situation where there's ICE enforcement, and while simultaneously there's opening of new detention centers, privately owned and operated detention centers opening up simultaneously as these decisions are happening, more beds means more enforcement, which means in a business model for private prison corporations such as the GO Group or Core Civic means more money, right? You just mentioned, right, Reveal said, right, that the funding bill for DHS has gone up from 8 billion to 28 billion, right? Which means more bed, more capacity, more ICE agents, more arrests, and now having a free pass to racially profile individuals to fill up these beds. And whether or not the individual is undocumented, in this case, let's say that it's a US citizen, it doesn't matter. The facility is getting money, right? The private prison corporation and their stakeholders are obtaining large profits by these arrests. And by the way that we've seen these arrests carry out and the way that individuals have been processed, it's been taking anywhere from 48 to 72 hours for someone to have contact with a phone and contact their loved one, right? Even if they are a US citizen. And so who wins in this situation? It's private prison corporations that are expanding detention at such alarming rates. I believe what's codified in Congress, if I'm not mistaken, is 32 thousand or 34,000 of people in detention at any given time, the fact that there's nearly or about 60,000 people currently detained, double the capacity of detention, is beyond alarming. And so again, who wins? Not even the individuals who may not agree, or or individuals who are agreeing with the types of ICE enforcement that is being carried out. You're fracturing your community, right? Now there's this sense of who's with me, who's against me, who's this and who's that. So no one's winning. The community is not winning, whether what side you're sitting on. But these private prison corporations and their stakeholders are winning major profits for sure.
Thank you, Edwin. If you just tune in, you are listening to MendoLatino, and my name is Loreto Rojas. I'm here with my co-host Diana Coriat, and we have the incredible opportunity to speak with Edwin Carmona-Cruz from CCIJ about current immigration policies. And today we are making MendoLatino English language only because we had recorded another interview with Edwin that was aired last week. You can find that interview in our YouTube channel called MendoLatino. And today we felt that it's important to share this important information with everybody and people that don't speak Spanish. So here we are, you are listening to MendoLatino.
That's right. And, you know, I want to also focus on, what immigrant justice looks like, and certainly having privately owned detention centers. We've just been talking about that with Edwin, and I want to go on with that. So what does that mean when it's a privately held and it's a for-profit prison? So what kind of things happen in prison, in a for-profit prison? What's the logic of detention?
So I first want to say that whether it's public or private, CCIJ opposes all types of incarceration. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. But I will say this, right? For example, there was a public contract. And by mean public, it means for example, the Yuba County Sheriff's Department had a public contract, an IGSA, an Intergovernmental Service Agreement with the Department of Homeland Security. And that contract cost $8.6 million. And so a year to host, it was like a minimum of 150 beds at this jail, right? On the older part of the jail. That's really completely awful. The difference between that situation and, for example, a newly opened facility such as California City, which just opened 2 weeks ago without its valid permits, right? There's an additional layer that sometimes helps to evade the question of who has authority over what. Is these private corporations will often say, well, we're just the contractor, right? If you have any issues, you have to go through the federal government to respond to that, right? Versus a situation at the Yuba County Jail and the sheriff, right, where they have to abide by California state law, and there is a different level of congressional oversight, local oversight that happens there. So those are some of the differences. Often they'll say like, well, private corporations will make money. Well, in this situation, for example, the Yuba County Jail example, the sheriff was winning money, right? Someone's winning something by detaining people in inhumane conditions, right? Spending less to earn more profit. And a situation like this at Yuba County Jail, the sheriff and the county were earning $8.6 million a year. That contract was supposed to outlive all of us. The amended contract that was signed right before there was a bill that basically in California to eliminate these types of intergovernmental agreements, that contract was supposed to be expired in the year 2099. How far out are we having those types of discussions? Similarly with the Golden State Annex in McFarland, the Mesa Verde Processing Center in Bakersfield, the new California City facility, those contracts are signed 5 years, 10 years, or what have you. In this situation, the stakeholders and other people that are investing in the Geo Group and Core Civic and Management Training Corporation, the other privately owned facility that operates the Imperial Regional Detention Center on the border, other people win. But the people that are impacted are not winning, and no one in the community is winning, because oftentimes these facilities just bring more problems to the local community. And so those are some of the difference. I mean, there are more differences I know we can discuss, but those are mainly the differences. Sorry, just to add one more thing. In a situation where the private facility will say, well, I'm just a private operator, right? We don't deal with that, right? It's a private corporation. Many advocates for several years now have made these similar arguments, where the facility may think that argument is a way to avoid any type of accountability. But if they're saying that they're a private corporation, then the state of California can and should be able to regulate private corporations, how they do business, how they handle business in California, right? We just talked about the wine industry in Mendocino, for Bragg. I just visited a couple of weeks ago. But those are private businesses. Some are family owned, right? Private businesses that still have to abide by California law, right? Some standards of the way that the grapes are harvested, or the way that wine is made, or how people are getting paid. All of those things the state of California can and should regulate. So in a situation like this, private corporations have been trying to avoid accountability, and the government's easy way saying, well, that's the contractor. The contractor saying that's the federal government, right? And in the middle of all of that, there's human suffering happening within those confines, within those walls.
Loreto, did you want to say something or ask a question? You're on mute.
Sorry, guys. I was just processing what Edwin is saying, because there's so much to unpack here while we are listening to the local, to the national news, and it's quite a situation, no, that we are dealing with. And so I know the mission of your organization is really aiming to end, to end all this incarceration of people, right? So I wanted to ask you, what is your organization doing currently to work on this? If you can give us some examples about that. And I know we are going to go back and forth revisiting certain topics, because it really is it's quite a situation with the numbers and the investment. But let's talk about what you are doing, guys, which is in the positive side of defending our rights. So let's talk about that.
Yes. Ending immigrant detention, but also building power towards liberation, towards freedom. That to us is core to everything that we do. And
excuse me, Edwin, like we are saying, right? Building power, not fear, right? Like right, like moving from this place of being so afraid, because I have been asking myself, how can I actually prove that I'm a citizen and all that kind of thing? So organizing and talking to you and organizing with people locally is really helpful. So sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to really say that the suffering is real and is for all of us, because the policies that we see coming from the federal government said that, okay, if the person looks Latino, and like, okay, that's me. And if it speaks with an accent, oh, that's me altogether. Or if they speak Spanish in the street, oh, that's me all the time. So it becomes really unsettling to understand what to do and how to protect each other.
Yeah, you're definitely speaking to my core, and also to many people that I also engage with every day, families that are also equally as panicked and have a lot of fear. But yes, power, not panic, building this power towards liberation. And unfortunately, there aren't enough CCIJs, or aren't enough Edwins, or aren't enough of these community-based organizations that will be there at every single step of the way. So what do? Is we want to make sure that families and communities have the tools necessary to fight these, and I don't want to say unjust deportations, because I think that deportations are unjust generally, but for the sake of this topic, I'll just say unjust deportations of individuals, of families, and to know that you as a person actually have a lot of different power. You as a person can also help to fight a very public campaign on behalf of your loved one. Right before this interview, I was preparing with our incredible communications director, who's also from that northern region. And, we were talking back and forth about this idea of power. And for the listeners that are English speaking who are tuning in today, sometimes may say like, well, what can I do? Like, what is available in my purview, right? In my authority. And the simplest thing here is the right to vote, right? And you oftentimes, when people say, oh, but you can go vote in the ballot box, okay, you can't just cast your vote and just say you call it a day, right? But in terms of the way that you can help people in the long term, which is one piece of this like larger puzzle, is the power. You have the power to decide who your district attorney is, the district attorney who can decide to prosecute people. And sometimes we've seen prosecutors, district attorneys stick everything on the wall and see what sticks, which some spaghetti charges, I call them, right? And that drives up the type of criminalization that we've seen of our communities, right? Not just the rhetoric coming from the White House of saying, well, they're all criminals because you're here without documents. Well, there's an active process of taking status away from people and making them, quote unquote, criminals, as you would say, right? But also that comes with the type of prosecution from the district attorney and the type of harassment that members of the community sometimes face from local law enforcement. So you have the authority to vote who the district attorney is. Similarly, the authority to vote who the public defender is. You have, the right and are voting for local elected officials as well as congressional offices that have some sort of level of oversight over these facilities. So yes, you may say, well, I'm going to vote and that's it. And this is the chance to vote. I'm only going to vote once every 4 years. There are local elections, smaller elections that happen every so often that we have to be continuously engaged in. So that's like, one thing I think to build power is to let people know that you actually have a voice and a say on a lot of different things that happen locally that I don't think that people realize. Yes, we're focused on the federal government, and I think that's an easy way for people's attention to be kind of directed to, but don't forget that you also have a say in your county, in your city, and where you live. So, that's like one piece. The other piece, like I mentioned, is this idea of fighting the case alongside your loved one of this public campaign, right? There's an opportunity again to engage your local member of Congress and say, hey, they took my loved one. They haven't received their medication. It's been 3 days. They're diabetic. They need their medication, right? Or sometimes we've seen people who need some sort of walking assistant, whether it's a cane or some sort of walking assistant, and that maybe the person no longer has while they're in detention because the facility takes it away because they'll say, well, it's a weapon, right? There have been people who have not gotten eyeglasses in over 3 months while being detained. So how are they supposed to read documents that as they're fighting their case? So these are all things that families can do on the outside to build that power and to fight alongside their loved one.
Thank you for mentioning our representatives, because it's something that we have done in the past, and it's really effective, really, to involve them when we are witnessing a situation that is lingering or when answers are not provided, and in many different levels. So thank you for reminding us about that. And our representatives here in Mendocino County and this area in Northern California are really well organized, and they are willing to answer. I know because I have advocated for people in the past, not recently, but thank you for reminding us that we have the right to write to our representatives and ask them to help us in these situations. And one of the things, naturally, you already are mentioning this situation that is about our loved ones being put already in one of these facilities. You already highlighted that that's a process that from the time that a person is taken to the moment that is going to be is going to appear in the system. This is the lingering time that we call when people are disappearing, right? Because they need to be transported to a specific office where they are going to be processed and where they are going to be, and then families can find where they are located and find ways to communicate with these people, right? So I wanted to ask you another question that I think is important. Is like, okay, so if one of our listeners is part or in our own family, we are a family of mixed status. So we know there are some people that don't have documents and others do, and there are children involved and maybe 3 generations in the same household. Could you just explain a little bit how families can prepare if they are in that situation? What would be a good thing that they can do besides knowing the name of their representative and phone numbers, and maybe, have an idea of certain, maybe your own organization and other resources where they can find legal help? But what can we do as family, and then, that we can replicate that into our closest group? Yeah, sometimes when I talk about these things, I feel that we are back to COVID times, where we have to care for our family bubble, and then we will have to move a little bit out and understand how we can support each other in this situation.
That's a great example. And actually, I wanted to flag, we do have a resource on our website of how to locate a detained loved one. Again, there's not enough Edwins, there's not enough CCIJs out there, and there are steps that your family can take to locate a loved one. We are updating this guide as we speak, because the law is changing like every single week, and the facilities are including different processes to go visit someone. And so, so we're trying to update it as much as possible. But yes, I mean, Loreto, you're talking about just this process, right, of the disappearance. What happens the 2 hours after someone is arrested, and we'll go into those details. But really, there's nothing like family preparedness, and there's nothing like speaking to your kids and your loved ones about your current situation. Oftentimes, and I said this in the Spanish version, but I think it's really appropriate, of a dear friend, colleague of mine who didn't know they were undocumented until they were filling out the FAFSA application, right? The federal student aid application. And at that time, he must have been like 16 or 17 years old. We were juniors in high school when that happened. But you could imagine, like, if something were to happen to their loved one or their parent during that time, the shock of being, wait a minute, I was under the impression that we had documents this whole time, right? Or I was under the impression of this. So to our parents who are listening out there with their kids, have those open conversations with your kids. Talk to them about what happens if mommy or daddy is unable to go pick you up from school, and also talk about who that emergency contact is, because there is often times where, okay, you have a tia or some sort of parent or neighbor that's the emergency contact, but the child has no idea who that is, right? Or doesn't have that relationship. You don't want to cause that confusion, right? Also, you want to take care of your child, because you don't want something else happening to your child saying, I'm the emergency contact, and okay, if you say so, right? And the child goes with some sort of stranger. But it really is to be able to prepare your families for that type of emergency. Loreto, that COVID example is I think really excellent, because you have to think about, where are our important documents? What happens if there's an emergency? If there's a natural disaster, if there's a fire, if there's an earthquake, what are the protocols for your family to be together if you are separate? Those are things that I talk to my family all the time. Sometimes they'll say, Edwin, you're overreacting, or Edwin, whatnot. But from the fires and the earthquakes we've seen just this year, even the past year, you can't put it past us to think about that. So family planning and talking to your kids about what is important is super helpful. Again, we're updating this guide for families to locate their loved ones. Many people luckily have never had to live with a loved one being incarcerated, whether it's in a jail, prison, or in a detention center. They don't know how to get in contact with their loved one. They don't know that they need to send money or where they need to send a money order or a check. They don't know the applications that you could download to send messages to your loved one, right, that are monitored. And all of these things that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, right? So we as advocates, as a resource to the community, are attempting to make sure that our communities know what they don't know, so they're better able to prepare for such event.
That's great. I want to bring up a sensitive topic because this is something Loreto and I often talk about together and with other people. So let's say we're organizing at the level of family, but we're also now, you've been to Fort Bragg. I remember you told me you visited, you were really impressed by how
Yes.
community oriented we all looked. We all looked like we knew each other. And it's true that right here, there's a very rich culture of saying hello in the street, knowing who your neighbors are, and many volunteers, people volunteer across the spectrum, from young children to very, very old people in the Latino community, the Anglo community, and everybody that's here, indigenous community, and many other people. Everyone's volunteer oriented. So let's say that we want to organize. I live on a street with different families that are Latino, and I know that they're going to be racially profiled, whether they're legal, whatever their status is, because there are various statuses, right? And so Loreto often says to me and to other people, don't ask people what their status is. I mean, don't ask people the last time they went to Mexico, because that's, some people might not have been back for a long time. So how do we balance, and this is for Loreto also to think through with Edwin, how do we balance that right to privacy and that right to not, really ask people questions that they're very uncomfortable about answering? And how do we organize our street or our community?
Mm-hmm.
And, how do we balance that right to, the gather information about each other and be able to act with each other and also respect people's privacy?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky question.
Tricky question, but Diana, like, there's so much more that connects us than like just knowing what each other's like status is, right? And in fact, there's so much more that in common that we have, right? How many grandchildren do you have? How many children do you have, right? It's the sense of humanizing the stranger and humanizing your neighbor. And yes, you're absolutely right. The sense of saying good morning, good afternoon, how's it going? Or even just looking at into your eyes as you're walking down the street in Fort Bragg and or in Mendocino, and it disarms people, right? You're no longer just a stranger. You've made contact. It's an acknowledgement that, oh, you and I are human, and we're living this human experience. So when we're talking about self-organizing, and I can't stress that enough, again, there's no power that is stronger than a community that is self-organized. And what does that mean? It can mean a lot of different things, right? We talk about the COVID situation. I think that was a really great example, something we could replicate now, given the new circumstances, is whether there's a calendar to do food drop off, or to go pick up food for your loved one. But it doesn't just include a family that may not have documents or comes from a mixed status family. It may include someone who's elderly, who's unable to drive, right? Or someone who is disabled or is unable to perform that activity on their own and need additional support. Those are all the little things that are not so little, but those are all of the situations where you're able to create a stronger connection than just asking, when was the last time you went to Venezuela or to Mexico or whoever. It's really saying, where do we as humans relate? Where can we relate? And let's go from there. Loreto, do you see that too?
Oh, totally. It's just, first, I want to recognize that we live in a quite rural area. So it's easier to do that when you are like in Fort Bragg, the town you visited, where there is one house next to the other. Also in Fort Bragg and Ukiah too, it has been quite refreshing to know that there are not neighborhoods that are Latinos. So actually, when we look at the demographics of our small towns, we are all mixed. So there's not, like there's not the East zone or the West that is just Latino. So that's good. So, and as I always like to say, Latinos are everywhere anyway, if you really want to see and find them, because it's really, people may just say, oh, there are not many Latinos here, but recently a woman I met, she said, when I moved here, I was really shocked. I thought, oh, this is a very white community. Then I went to teach at the school, and I realized that half of the kids were Latinos. So there, there is a public space that perhaps Latinos are little by little, we are taking more room into the first lines, and then recognizing more. But with many other individuals that live more rural and they are more, disconnected from the neighbors, just geographically, physically. I do recognize the importance of getting together, and that's something that it again goes back to what you are saying in terms of organizing locally. And I always very proudly talk about my neighborhood, because I'm in a close to town, but it's still outside in the forest. But we get together. We have 2-3 neighbors that have yearly parties, and we get together, and so we know each other. So when we drive around, I make a point of always waving to my neighbors, and so they know me and my car, and what am I doing or whatever. I think that's relevant. And but I want to tell our community at large that really wants to help the Latinos, but they don't have a strong connection with Latinos. Highlight exactly what you're saying, Edwin. It's like, okay, so maybe you do hire someone to do your firewood, or you have someone that helps you cleaning your house. So yeah, that's the place where you can establish a connection with people. And exactly what you're saying, Edwin, is you have children, how your kids are doing in school. And it's really, and it's something also that it grows little by little.
Yes.
And I want to just mention that recently one of the members of our community called me and asked me. He said, they were saying, we want to put some, like a flyer saying no ice here, or something that will, reflect that. And he said, some people, some other non-Latinos have said, well, maybe that will really bring attention to our community. So he was hesitating about what to do it or not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But my feeling, and I think it's yours too, Edwin, is that we need to speak up. If we don't say anything about what's happening, somehow we are agreeing with the policies that have been implemented.
Yeah.
So as a community, we ought to say, this is not right. This is not okay. I have known this family. I know they are not criminals, have known them for 20 years, something. So anyway.
Yeah, I just want to jump in again and just say, for folks that are just tuning in, which happens all the time, we listen to the KZYX a lot in our cars, so it depends what time we're going somewhere. If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Edwin Carmona-Cruz from CCIJ, which is the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice, and we're talking about the current rise in ICE detentions and what we can do as a community locally. And we're talking about the importance of knowing our rights. And we're also talking about, how do we organize as a community? And so, again, I want to mention that there are local organizations that are offering Know Your Rights trainings in Spanish and in English, and that's Nuestra Alianza of Willits, and also the Vision Family Resource Center of NCO. And these trainings can be conducted in person or virtually, and they're also helping to connect people with free and low-cost immigration legal services. And we are also, as a community, there are people here who have been planning for months and months to roll out our own rapid response network. So while no immigrant raids massive raids have been reported locally. We have to be prepared. I mean, what is the government going to do with all that money? ICE is going to do with all its money. It's going to be able to go into every little corner. And we want people to be prepared. So, getting back again to that, Edwin, about community organizing, what are like, give me 3 steps, like 3 concrete things that a family should do right now, a family that feels like whether it's they're here legally, whether they're whoever you are, you're going to be racially profiled. You could be Native American. What should people have on them? What should people, what kind of information should they have from their family members?
Yeah, they could be citizens, longtime citizens, and they just are brown.
Look, I'm from New York City originally, and Puerto Ricans who are US citizens are regularly targeted and arrested in New York City right now. And that's happening here with Native people and with Chicanos, 3rd, 4th generation Chicanos, etc. So, what should people have on hand? Should people be carrying around their papers? I mean, let's get down to the basics
Oh
here.
my goodness. Yeah, that's also like such a heavy question. I just wanted to go back very quickly, Loreto, to the issue about like the conversation we just had, if folks are just joining us, of like knowing your neighbors, self-organizing, right? Not asking like, when was the last time you've been to Mexico or you've been outside of the country to visit your family, right? There's so many issues that impact us as people who live in the United States of America, right? The issue around wages and employment, right? The issue around health, the issue and access to healthcare. I mean, when you break it down to that level and saying, listen, you and I both are getting exploited for our work, right? You and I both are paying way too much taxes, or you and I both are X, Y, and Z, right? Those are some of the issues that I don't think that we have sat down and actually thought, like really discussed and talked about, because the idea is divide and conquer. They, as in the powers that be, want us to be separated, when in fact there's so many different things that actually connect us. And it is an injustice to just think that these issues are isolated. They only impact me and they only impact Diana or they only impact Loreto. It actually impacts a lot of us. So I just wanted to say that, because I think when you come down to that base level and saying, well, wait a minute, if you're feeling like that, I'm feeling like that too. And what's the common denominator? Like, what is the issue? And I think having us go towards that, I think, is important. In terms of what you could do for what you should carry or not in a situation where you're confronted with ICE or just in your everyday life, it's so unfortunate because this has happened. Like, this stuff is not new, right? In Arizona, in Texas, in other places, people who are brown, people who are whether they're indigenous or whether they are long-term US citizens that look a specific way, have had to carry their papers. They've had to carry their documents, right? We've seen
The closer you live to a border, usually,
well,
right? That's,
it's
and more than that, but I mean,
that's right.
certainly, yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's what is it? Like Border Patrol's authority is 100 air miles from within the border. So even not just the southern border, but like the coast as well. And that covers a large part of California, a lot of major cities, and up and down the coast. And so, again, other states have had to deal with this. But again, we can't have this conversation without saying the reason, right? It's like, there is a reason why the administration is going after places like LA, Los Angeles, Chicago, these bigger cities, right? They want to make an example out of them. And so in a situation like this, it's always good to carry your identity documents, right? Just be careful not to take the original with you, because if you lose it, or it gets stolen, then you have to go request another one. But really, like, identifying, locating important documents, making sure that, again, whether you have them on you or you have them in a safe place. Also identifying and confiding in your family and where to locate those specific documents if something were to happen to you. Again, for folks that just joined us, we talked about even U.S. citizens that are being arrested within these ICE enforcement actions, or even when there are people who've have been arrested, have been detained for several hours, and then have been released. Having to prove U.S. citizenship, right? Sometimes people don't have passports and they just have birth certificates or whatever that might be. So making sure you have updated documents, make sure that they're correct, and having a place where you can locate them. I think those are like the easier steps to take. But again, if you don't have that, or if you don't have physical documents, it's always good, again, to remember your rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right, do not sign anything. You have the right to request an attorney, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all the important things that I think that our listeners should take into consideration.
Do you know of any resources for employers? Because again, we have so many family businesses here that are many of them very loving and very supportive of their employees. And do you know of any great resources if an employer wants to learn more about what they can do to protect their employees if ICE shows up at the door, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. We actually, CCIJ published a series of videos and kits, the Communities United Against ICE toolkits, where it has a series of videos. And there's actually a video on what employers can do when facing a situation of ICE enforcement.
Can you send me the link to that? I could not find it on the website, and I'd like to put that out on our
It's also on our
Facebook
Instagram
page.
Folks can follow us at CCI Justice on Instagram, and also on all the other platforms. But those videos are really important because it actually goes step by step in terms of what employers can do. And these videos are based off of what we believe are sound, very accurate legal information from trusted partners that then we, as advocates, as organizers, and also attorneys, then transform and interpret them in easy to know English, right? Because sometimes legal jargon is like really hard to understand. But there are certain things that people can do, like employers can do, such as clearly displaying what is unauthorized for ICE agents to go in, what is private spaces, public spaces, asking for the warrant, asking a judicial warrant signed by a judge, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm happy to send all those resources out to all of you.
Thank you, Edwin. Yeah, and I want to make sure I have the right website. People can go to www. I never can say this in English. Sorry, guys.
www.
www.ccijustice, the word justice.org. If you just put in your search engine CCIJ, it will pop up immediately. And we are very grateful to have had today at Edwin Carmona-Cruz of the California Immigration Justice Collaborative. This is the CCIG part of it. And we really thank our audience for listening today, this program. We hope that you will share this program with other people that you think is important for them to listen, either family, colleagues, neighbors. You can visit our Facebook page, which is called MendoLatino. And also we have a YouTube channel, MendoLatino, where you can find all these programs and all the programs we have made and share widely with people. We have a version of this program in Spanish that it can be also found there at MendoLatino at the YouTube channel and Facebook page. So thank you very much for listening to MendoLatino, and thank you, Edwin, for coming today and explaining everything that we need. And we hope that we will continue working with you in the future. No doubt you are quite a resource and an important, like a good friend of mine will say, el frijol en la sopa. You are the bean in my soup. You are my protein, you are really something I know I can rely on. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody for listening to MendoLatino. See you in a few weeks.